The vast expanse of the nebula hall loomed like a celestial cathedral, its towering spires stretching up into the stars. The walls of the arena shimmered with liquid starlight, reflecting the ethereal glow of distant galaxies. A hum of anticipation filled the air, as the galaxy's most influential species gathered beneath the swirling colors of nebula, its gases swirling in a hypnotic dance. The hall wasn't just a building. It was an ancient nexus of political power, cultural exchanges, and the universal pulse of the galaxy's greatest events. Around the perimeter of the grand arena stood beings of every imaginable shape and form. Slender serpentine creatures, their bodies rippling with bioluminescence, hissed quietly as they shared whispered discussions in an ancient tongue. Heavy-set, muscular beings with skin like molten lava observed with quiet contemplation, their eyes glowing with a deep internal fire. In the center of the gathering, towering, almost ethereal entities made of shifting light and dark energy watched with cold, calculating gazes. From the smallest insectoid to the largest Leviathan-like species, they all watched the event with singular, unified intent: to witness the arrival of a new ambassador, a new challenge to the balance of power. It was a rare occasion, the grand presentation of the Nexus Prime diplomatic tournament, a centuries-old tradition where the greatest minds and warriors of the galaxy competed not just in battle, but in the subtle arts of negotiation, diplomacy, and influence. This was no mere game. It was a ritual that would shape the next millennium of galactic governance. And yet, amidst the frenetic energy of alien species exchanging strategies, one figure was about to disrupt the course of this ancient tradition. Unbeknownst to the others, a single human, a young girl from Earth, was about to enter this strange world of power. She was here, against all odds, and her presence would change everything. A soft hum vibrated through the walls of the preparation chamber as the alien ambassadors readied themselves for the tournament. Their movements were fluid, graceful, practiced, the epitome of intergalactic diplomacy. Towering creatures with shimmering scales meditated in silence, their thoughts syncing with the cosmic hum of the nebula. A floating entity composed of liquid energy hovered in a zen-like state, pulses of light emanating from its core in rhythmic beats. And then, in stark contrast, she walked in, Lily Green, a young earthling, barely 5 feet 4 inches, and wearing a faded, slightly wrinkled hoodie and jeans, strolled into the grand chamber without a hint of reverence. Her messy brown hair was tied up into a loose ponytail, and she clutched a half-empty water bottle in one hand and her tablet in the other, where she was absent-mindedly tapping through her social media feed. A few of the more disciplined competitors looked her up and down, their gaze disapproving, as if wondering what this human was doing among such esteemed company. Some whisper about her unorthodox attire. Clearly, they didn't understand the power of human comfort. "Hey, does anyone know if there's Wi-Fi here?" Lily called out, as if she had just walked into a coffee shop, completely unfazed by the cosmic power players surrounding her. The air shifted with confusion. The room fell into an uneasy silence. An insectoid ambassador with 6 shimmering legs hesitated, blinking with multiple eyes in unison. "The tournament of Nexus Prime is a sacred event," one of the attendants finally said, though his voice seemed unsure. Yeah, I know." Lily waved it off, her voice cheerful, but, my phone's about to die, and I'd hate to be disconnected for the next few days. Just trying to keep up with the news, She smirked. "Plus, I heard the coffee here is supposed to be out of this world." Literally. An awkward pause followed as she took a swig from her water bottle. The surrounding competitors stared at her in disbelief. How could this young, unpolished human, casually sipping from a bottle in the middle of the most important diplomatic event in the galaxy, stand a chance against such legendary minds and beings? But Lily didn't care. She'd come from a small town in Michigan, where surviving her high school's chaotic cafeteria was as much of a challenge as any galactic summit. Here, in the heart of this cosmic tournament, she didn't feel out of place. She wasn't here to impress anyone, and she definitely wasn't trying to conform to alien standards. She was simply herself, brimming with a unique kind of quiet confidence that seemed to frustrate every sophisticated species in the room. As she scrolled through her tablet with one hand, Lily casually pulled up a strange app, the coffee app, and began swiping through it, clearly searching for a nearby cafe. Anyone know if there's, a decent latte stand in this place? It's a long flight, and I could really use a pick-me-up." Another ripple confusion ran through the room. They couldn't quite place it. The audacity, the calmness, the strange certainty she radiated despite her human quirks. But deep down, the true question hung in the air, unspoken yet undeniable. Was this young girl from Earth truly an underdog, or did she possess something far more dangerous than anyone in the galaxy could possibly understand? Something uniquely human. The tournament of Nexus Prime had long been a battlefield of intellect and diplomacy, a place where the greatest minds from across the galaxy gathered not just to showcase their prowess, but to shape the future of interstellar relations. Legends of past tournaments reverberated through the corridors of Nexus Prime's floating arena, where political agreements were forged, alliances were broken, and the fate of entire star systems had been decided in the blink of an eye. Among the competitors this year was an alien unlike any other. Tarnak, the supreme scholar of the Zalorian Empire, had been undefeated for over 4 centuries. His reputation stretched from the outer reaches of the Archon Belt to the farthest edges of the Andromeda Cluster. Known for his meticulous strategy and unmatched cunning, he had always relied on the time-tested methods of his ancient species: patience, discipline, and absolute control over every outcome. Tarnak, with his chrome-silver skin and elegant posture, stood at the center of the preparation chamber, his countless glowing eyes scanning the data on the tournament participants. The data was precise, cold, and undeniable. Every contender before him had been thoroughly analyzed, each one filed away in a mental database of predictability. His fingers twitched slightly as he came across Lily Green's profile. His 3 main eyes narrowed. Human, inexperienced, untrained, unfit. He scoffed. This is not a challenge. This is a distraction. Tarnak's strategy was simple, perfect, and utterly reliant on absolute control. The Zalorians had never known defeat, and they would not begin now, especially not against a human with no formal training. He had taken down the greatest diplomats, tacticians, and scholars the galaxy had ever known, each with the ease of a master disarming a child. Lily Green, in his estimation, was a mere speck in a galaxy of titans. Yet, as he continued to review her file, there was something peculiar about her. Despite her lack of training, her unrefined demeanor, and her strange ability to disrupt every formality in sight, there was something undeniably intriguing. She had a natural wit, an unyielding charm, and an unsettling way of making even the most complex strategies seem insignificant. It was clear that this tournament was to be his, without question. But as he looked across the room at the other participants, a diverse, meticulously trained assembly of minds, he knew this challenge was more than just a test of skill. This was a chance to prove the supremacy of the Zalorians, to remind the galaxy of their dominance in an era where new species and untested methods threatened to dilute the old ways. "Do not underestimate her," Tarnak muttered to himself, finally tearing his eyes away from Lily's profile. His 4 secondary eyes flared with an intensity that could melt star metal. "But I will end her before she even has a chance to begin." The odds were overwhelmingly stacked against Lily. Tarnak's centuries of experience meant he had a near-immortal understanding of every tactic, every cultural nuance, and every psychological play. He knew how to manipulate the politics of the room, how to sway the votes of the council, and how to win even before the contest began. To him, the tournament was not about playing by the rules. It was about bending the universe to his will. And Lily? She was a wild card, a disruptor, a human who had the audacity to challenge everything Tarnak represented. The moment she entered the arena, the ancient scholar's mind began working, calculating her every move, predicting every misstep she would make, waiting for the exact moment to strike. It would be an easy win, or so he thought. A quick, clean sweep. The galaxy would bow to the Zalorian Empire once again. But the moment Lily set foot into the arena, she smiled, unaware of the weight of the odds against her. She didn't know it yet, but she had already made a decision, one that would change the galaxy forever. And in doing so, she had already won. As the grand opening of the tournament loomed, the tension built to a fever pitch. Tarnak's gaze lingered on Lily one last time, his confidence growing. She would crumble under the pressure. But a flicker of doubt lingered in the back of his mind an unfamiliar feeling. Something human. The battle of the old ways and the new had begun, and the future of the galaxy would hinge on whether a young, underestimated human could defy the odds and shake the foundations of everything Tarnak believed in. The tournament of Nexus Prime was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Alien species from across the stars gathered to demonstrate not only their physical prowess, but their intellectual genius, diplomatic abilities, and mastery of advanced technologies. To succeed, one had to adhere to an unspoken code, a strict, almost ceremonial preparation that involved intense mental focus, elaborate training regimens, and an overwhelming respect for tradition. And then there was Lily Green, standing in the preparation area. Lily was a stark contrast to her competitors. Where the others meditated, fine-tuned their gadgets, or donned their ceremonial armor, she was sprawled on a metal bench, sipping on what looked like an overly sweetened, neon-colored drink that hummed with a strange energy. Her uniform, an unassuming human outfit with a bright, vibrant pattern that looked like it had been picked at random, stood out amidst a sea of formal, battle-ready attire. Lily had no desire to blend in, not even for the tournament. She wasn't here to prove anything to anyone. She was here because she was bored and because her best friend had dared her to sign up. The stakes were high for everyone else, but for Lily, this was just one big, intergalactic game of survival with a few extra quirks thrown in for good measure. "You're really just going to wear that?" asked Srem, a fierce-looking warrior from the planet Kotharn, his rocky exoskeleton shimmering under the overhead lights. He was clad in elaborate, ornate armor, the kind that could withstand the force of a supernova. His voice had a sharp, gravelly tone, as though he'd spent too many centuries shouting battle cries. "Yep, pretty much," Lily said nonchalantly, taking another sip from her drink. She offered him a wink. "I figure if this whole thing doesn't work out, at least I look fabulous." Srem stared at her for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "But this is the tournament of Nexus Prime. It's about tradition, honor, strategy." "Hey," Lily interrupted, raising a finger. I know, but tradition sounds like it's in desperate need of a vacation. You can't take things too seriously, man. It'll make your head explode." She leaned back, pulling a tiny portable fan out of her bag and setting it to blow cool air into her face. "This is supposed to be fun. You gotta remember that." Her unconventional approach left Srem speechless for a moment. He glanced down at her sneakers, with the cartoon dinosaurs on them. The contrast between her carefree, almost juvenile demeanor and his ancient, battle-hardened appearance was enough to make him question his life choices. At that exact moment, Adrian Chun, a human who was rumored to be the only other non-alien competitor in the tournament, walked into the room. He was a very definition of underdog, with a wide grin, disheveled hair, and a total lack of concern for the meticulously crafted regalia surrounding him. "Hey, I found the coffee machine," he said, raising a travel mug as if it were some sort of victory trophy. "Who's in for a quick caffeine break before the big event?" Lily's face lit up, and for a split second, the professional atmosphere of the tournament dissipated. She jumped up, totally disregarding the usual protocol of quiet, focused preparation. "You're my hero," she declared, marching over and grabbing a cup from Adrian. She clinked her cup against his and took a large sip. "Is it safe to drink?" Srem asked cautiously, eyeing the caffeine-filled liquid like it might explode at any moment. Lily shrugged. "Not sure. I didn't read the ingredients. But hey, it's coffee, right? What could go wrong?" "That's not exactly a comforting answer," Srem muttered under his breath. Adrian, ever the optimist, rolled his eyes. "Come on, buddy, it's just coffee. But I get it. You guys don't understand the magic of caffeine." He took a sip from his own mug and grinned. "It's like fuel for the brain. Helps with focus. Keeps you alert." Lily laughed and spun in a circle, looking like she was about to start a spontaneous dance. "Focus, huh? If you're looking for focus, I've got you covered. I'm more about unfocus and randomness." She flipped her hair dramatically. "Helps me keep my edge." Srem was thoroughly confused. How do you expect to perform in a tournament with no strategy? No plan? Lily shrugged again, her eyes dancing with mischief. "Hey, I've got plenty of strategy. It just involves a lot of winging it. taking things as they come, and hoping everyone's too confused by my unpredictability to notice I'm not actually doing anything that makes sense. Adrian laughed loudly, slapping his knee. Now that's a strategy one can get behind. He threw a playful look at Shrem. And it works, trust me. I once got through an entire mission just by convincing the enemy I had no idea what I was doing. People underestimate chaos, man. It's powerful. The crowd was in stunned silence, unsure whether this was some kind of strategic genius or the most absurd thing they'd ever seen. But Zorth, unable to maintain his focus, finally lost control of his gravity field, sending a massive shockwave through the arena. In the chaos, the chair Lily was sitting on was sent flying, but she jumped out of it midair, landing on her feet and, with a grin, delivering the final blow, a simple, well-placed poke to Zorth's side. Zorth staggered, his gravitational field collapsing as he stumbled, finally admitting defeat as he tumbled to the ground. "Hey, don't blame me," Lily said nonchalantly, brushing off the dust. "I told you, I'm just here for the snacks." The crowd erupted in a mix of laughter, disbelief, and applause. How had she done it? With no fancy moves, no overpowering strength, just pure audacity. Her next match was against a cybernetic monk, one who had mastered both technology and martial arts, merging them into an almost unstoppable combination. His every move was calculated, precise, and deadly, his mechanical limbs clicking and whirring with unnatural precision. As the monk charged forward, his hands crackling with energy, Lily pulled out a whoopee cushion. She placed it at the center of the arena and waited for him to approach. The monk raised his hands, preparing to unleash a powerful energy strike. But as soon as he stepped forward and his foot landed on the whoopee cushion, the sound echoed through the arena, a loud honk that broke his concentration. The monk's face, if he had one, showed utter confusion, and for a moment he hesitated. Lily seized the opportunity. She casually sidestepped the strike and gave him a playful shove, sending him crashing into the energy field with a loud clang. The audience roared with laughter. The cybernetic monk, now completely thrown off balance by the absurdity of the situation, was easily defeated. Lily once again simply shrugged and waved. Hey, everyone needs a laugh now and then, right? As she moved toward the next round, there was no doubt in anyone's mind. Lily Green was a force of nature in this tournament, but not for the reasons anyone expected. Her opponents might have had power, precision, and skill, but Lily had something they didn't. A complete disregard for the norms, the confidence to defy expectations, and the ability to make the galaxy laugh in the process. And as she stepped into the arena for her next match, she was ready to prove once again that the greatest strength of all was to never, ever take things too seriously. Grandmaster Zora stood in the quiet solitude of his chambers, a room constructed from polished black obsidian that absorbed the noise of the galaxy outside. His six-eyed gaze, normally a picture of composure, flicked across the holographic projections of his opponents, each one meticulously analyzed, each one a formidable challenger. Yet, as his eyes landed on Lily Green's latest match, a bead of cold sweat formed on his brow. This human, he shook his head in disbelief, his mechanical limbs clicking as he zoomed in on her casual, almost playful movements. The image showed Lily skipping around a battlefield, avoiding his carefully calculated strikes with a mix of absurd humor and carefree confidence. A whoopee cushion, a beach ball, a laser pointer. "What is this?" Zorth growled, his deep, resonant voice tinged with confusion. It was unlike anything he had ever seen in the countless tournaments he had participated in. Her style was maddening. There was no structure, no respect for battle, no honor in it. This was not combat. It was mockery. He replayed the footage again, scrutinizing every move. His cybernetic enhancements hummed as they processed the data, calculating every possible strategy. But no matter how many times he watched Lily's unpredictable antics, each one a slap in the face to his disciplined approach, seemed to undermine everything he knew about combat. She's not breaking the rules. Zora thought, the realization hitting him with the force of a collapsing star. She's breaking the game. A soft beep sounded, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a message from his second-in-command. He grimaced, dismissing the communication without a second glance. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered now except this human. She had become an anomaly, a challenge he could not overcome using the methods he had honed over centuries of training. She was nothing like the precise, strategic adversaries he had defeated before. Instead, she embodied chaos. And chaos, he realized, was his true enemy. Zorth stood up, his frame towering over the holographic projection of Lily's most recent victory. His gravity manipulation powers pulsed in the air around him, creating small rifts in the space-time continuum. He clenched his fists, his mind racing. The traditional ways of combat were his lifeblood. His people had respected him as the master of gravity manipulation, a force whose very touch could bring worlds to their knees. He had trained for decades, battling against opponents who relied on skill, precision, and honor. These were the values that had shaped his life, his identity. But Lily was different. She didn't care about precision or power. She didn't fight with honor. She fought with humor, with absurdity, with unpredictability. And it was working. Zorth could no longer deny it. She was winning. Not because she was stronger, not because she had more skill, but because she understood the one thing that the galaxy had long forgotten. Combat didn't always have to follow the rules. He paced back and forth in his chamber, his thoughts growing darker by the second. Is this how the universe is changing? He wondered. Have we all become so trapped in tradition that we've lost the ability to adapt? His thoughts turned to his ancestors, their towering monuments of strategy, their gleaming legacy built on centuries of discipline. Was it all for nothing? Had they spent all that time honing their powers, perfecting their arts, only to be undone by a human who treated the very concept of battle like a joke? No. Zorth's voice reverberated through his mind, firm and resolute. This cannot be the end of the old ways. I will not allow it. He needed to understand her, to break her, to destroy this infectious chaos before it spread and unraveled everything he stood for. Zorth turned to a console and opened a secure link to his most trusted informant, an intelligence officer who had managed to infiltrate Lily's camp. The officer's face appeared in front of him, flickering for a moment before settling into a sharp, calculated expression. What have you learned? Zorth asked, his voice low and dangerous. She's not what she appears to be, the officer replied, clearly intimidated by the looming presence of Zorth. Lily Green isn't just a random competitor. She's unpredictable, yes, but there's something more. She doesn't just disrupt the tournament. She disrupts everything she touches. Her strategies, her approaches, they defy conventional logic. It's like she sees something no one else does. Zorth clenched his jaw. Explain. The officer hesitated before continuing. It's like she's playing a game that no one else knows the rules to. Like she's forcing the universe to bend to her will. I believe she might be deliberately making us question everything we know about combat, about life itself. She has to be stopped, Zorth thought, a deep sense of urgency taking root in his chest. But how? He ran through a mental list of all the tools at his disposal. His gravitational manipulation, his combat training, his centuries of battle experience. Nothing seemed adequate against her brand of chaos. There is one way, Zorth realized. I will adapt. I must. But that would require him to do something unthinkable, to step outside of the rigid traditions he had spent so long perfecting. It would mean changing everything, questioning everything he had been taught. Zorth's eyes narrowed as he turned back to the holographic projection of Lily's final match. The game was changing, and if he didn't find a way to adapt, it would be his undoing. I will defeat you, human, Zorth muttered to himself. I will defeat you by learning the one thing I've always refused to, how to bend, how to break the rules. And when I do, it will be my victory, and your chaos will be nothing more than a footnote in history. With a deep breath, Zorth turned away from projection, his mind already strategizing. He would not let a human, any human, disrupt the ancient traditions of combat. He would not let Lily Green be the one to rewrite the rules. But in that very moment, a tiny seed of doubt was planted in his heart. What if, just maybe, Lily was onto something? The tournament hall buzzed with excitement as the semifinals drew near. Alien spectators, from the towering insectoid Karn to the delicate, crystalline beings known as the Xenorians, filled every seat, their whispers forming a low hum in the air. It was a sound that resonated deep within the Colosseum's gravity field, amplifying the anticipation. In the center of the arena, a massive digital screen flickered to life, displaying the final contenders. At the top, in bold, glowing letters, Lily Green, human representative. Below her name, an ominous countdown hovered. 5 minutes until the match began. The crowd grew restless, as they had with every round, but today was different. Today, the air was thick with disbelief. A human, the species known for their clumsy technology and impetuous instincts, was in the final stretch an intergalactic tournament meant for the universe's most skilled and disciplined warriors. And the spectators, those who had once snickered and bet against her, were now holding their breath. They had watched her confound one opponent after another with sheer absurdity, and they had no idea how to process what they were seeing. Across the arena, a row of high-ranking officials observed the proceedings with quiet intensity. In a shadowed corner, Zorith, Grandmaster of the Gravity Arts and Lily's final opponent, stood still, his 6 eyes scanning the arena. His mind raced, but his expression remained cold and composed, as always. Today, however, his usual calm had an edge. He knew that this battle would be unlike anything he had ever faced. "This is madness," whispered an official next to him, clearly struggling to reconcile the situation. "How is this human even in the semifinals? She's a joke. She has no proper technique, no discipline. And yet, she's here, about to fight you." Zorith didn't answer. He didn't need to. He had his own thoughts on the matter. He knew this human was a direct challenge to the order he had spent centuries mastering. And despite her antics, there was something undeniably dangerous about her unpredictability. It was a quality that, ironically, made her the most formidable opponent he had ever faced. Back in the competitor's chamber, Lily sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor, surrounded by her mismatched gear. She wore a faded, oversized hoodie emblazoned with a Galaxy Tour logo from a band no one had ever heard of. Her combat boots were scuffed, and her hair was in an unkempt bun that seemed to defy gravity. For all the splendor of the tournament and the intimidating opponents, Lily seemed entirely unfazed. She was sipping from a mug of something hot, perhaps coffee, perhaps tea, but it was difficult to tell. Her mind was far away from the gravity of the situation. Her thoughts focused instead on something simpler. "I wonder if they'll have snacks at the after-party?" she mused aloud to no one in particular. Her voice echoed in the quiet room, but the humor and lightness of it was a stark contrast to the tense atmosphere outside. She was about to fight one of the most legendary warriors in the galaxy, and all she could think about was whether there would be nachos afterward. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. A small, hovering robot floated inside, delivering her final match report and a sealed envelope. It was official, so she opened it, scanning the contents. Her brow furrowed slightly as she read the name on the opposing side, Grandmaster Zorith. Her lips curved into a playful grin. "Oh, wow. The big guy himself," she murmured, shaking her head. "I really am in deep now." But there was no fear in her voice. No panic. Just that same offbeat confidence that had carried her this far. As the final match began, the arena descended into an almost unnatural silence. Every being in the stadium held their collective breath, their eyes trained on the center of the arena. On one side stood Zorith, poised and regal, his massive frame projecting an aura of invincibility. His arms were crossed, his 6 eyes narrowed in focus, calculating every angle of the upcoming battle. He had fought in countless tournaments, but nothing had ever felt quite as unsettling as this. And on the other side, standing with a casual ease that defied the expectations of a billion spectators, was Lily Green. She adjusted her hoodie, cracked her knuckles, and bounced lightly on her heels. She flashed a carefree smile at Zorith, and for the briefest moment, the crowd heard her mutter to herself, "Well, this should be interesting." The grand digital screen above the arena buzzed with an announcement, "Final match. Begin." And with that, the tension of the entire galaxy seemed to explode. Zorith's first strike came quickly, a precision attack designed to crush the human's weak defense. The air shifted as gravity twisted around him, forming a pulse of kinetic energy that tore through the space between them. But just as the blast reached its apex, Lily, unfazed, dropped flat to ground and rolled with a force, sending a wild cheer through the audience. The energy blast hit the arena floor, sending up a plume of dust. For a moment, the crowd was silent, unsure what they had just witnessed. Had she dodged that? And then, like a signal, the atmosphere exploded with incredulity and applause. Lily had simply evaded one of the most devastating attacks in the galaxy with nothing more than a well-timed roll. "Well, that was fun," she called out, grinning from ear to ear. "Try again." Zoratha's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with irritation. He had expected her to be good, but not this good. She was unpredictable. Her movements were erratic, yet somehow they worked. Every time he thought he had her cornered, she would do something completely unexpected, like tossing a pile of confetti into the air, temporarily blinding him, or using a small mirror to reflect his own energy blast back at him. Lily wasn't just winning. She was winning by refusing to play the game in the way Zorath and all of his predecessors had been trained to play. She was rewriting the rules of engagement, not just for combat, but for everything. In the stands, the reactions were a mixture of disbelief, awe, and sheer confusion. The odds had been stacked against her from the very start. And now, Lily was on the verge of taking down one of the most feared combatants in the galaxy. Spectators couldn't believe their eyes. "She's mocking him," one of the Zenorian beings exclaimed in confusion. "She's not even fighting properly." A Karn warrior grinned. "This human, she's doing the one thing we've never considered. She's having fun." The betting markets, once saturated with predictions of Zoratha's inevitable victory, now displayed a chilling message. Error does not compute. In the VIP section, a group of high-ranking officials exchanged uneasy glances. How could this be happening? Zoratha's frustration mounted. Every time he tried to anticipate her next move, Lily did something entirely different. Something that worked. The crowd was with her now, urging her on, cheering for her outrageous antics. How could one human be so effective? He was used to precision. He was used to certainty. But this was chaos. And chaos was a force he had never learned how to control. "This is madness," he thought as Lily, with a wink and a wave, dodged another devastating strike. And somehow it's working. But now Zorath knew he was no longer just fighting for victory. He was fighting to maintain the old order, to prove that there was no place in the universe for someone like Lily Green, someone who was willing to tear apart the rules and forge her own path. And with every move, every unpredictable twist she took, the stakes climbed higher. It wasn't just a battle for supremacy anymore. It was a battle for the future. The arena was cloaked in an eerie silence. The crowd held its collective breath, sensing that the galaxy was about to witness something that had never occurred before. This wasn't just another fight. It was a battle for the future, a confrontation between two forces that could not have been more different. On one side stood Zorath, the embodiment of tradition, discipline, and the exacting ways of the ancient warriors of the galaxy. On the other, Lily Green, the chaotic, unpredictable force of nature that had somehow defied the very rules of the game. The air crackled with energy, both literal and metaphorical, as the final match began. Zoratha's 6 eyes locked onto Lily, his posture immaculate, each of his massive limbs poised for battle. His reputation as the greatest fighter in the galaxy had been built on centuries of practice, precision, and adherence to a strict code of combat. Every move he made was calculated, every strike a study in flawless technique. Today, however, the stakes had never been higher. Today, he wasn't just fighting for a title. He was fighting for the preservation of his way of life, for everything that the galaxy had believed to be true. Lily, however, stood there with a smirk on her face, arms crossed casually. Her hoodie ruffled in the wind as she bobbed slightly on her heels, clearly unfazed by the looming behemoth in front of her. Her combat boots scuffed the ground as she readied herself, a look of complete nonchalance in her eyes. "Ready when you are, big guy," she called out, her voice light and carefree. Zorath blinked, first in confusion, then in a flicker of something that could almost have been frustration. How could she be so casual? How could she treat the final match of the tournament as if it were some silly game? Without warning, He lunged forward, his powerful leg propelling him like a living comet. His arms sliced through the air, creating whistling winds that would have crushed any lesser opponent. The blow was a testament to his centuries of training, sharp, direct, and deadly. But Lily? She sidestepped, twirled, out of the way, moving so fluidly it was almost like watching a dancer in slow motion. She grinned and raised an eyebrow, the same carefree expression on her face. Not bad, but you might want to try a little less force next time. You're going to hurt something, she teased. The crowd gasped. This human, who had no formal training, no understanding of the ancient arts, had just dodged one of the most powerful attacks in the galaxy with nothing more than an exaggerated pirouette. The reaction was electric, a mix of awe, disbelief, and incredulity. No one had ever seen anything like it. Zortha's gaze hardened. His tactics had been dismissed. This human, this chaotic force, was mocking him, defying everything he had spent a lifetime perfecting. He wasn't sure what kind of strategy she was employing, but he couldn't afford to underestimate her any longer. With a roar, he unleashed his signature move, the Star Strike, a devastating barrage of energy projectiles that would strike down anything in its path. The arena seemed to shudder as the lasers erupted from his hands, whizzing through the air at a speed that would have obliterated any competitor. The crowd gasped again, some recoiling at the sheer intensity of the attack. But Lily? She jumped into the air, not to dodge the attack, but to leap over it. She flipped, as if gravity had forgotten its hold on her. She landed with a soft thud, skipping backward on the balls of her feet, as though the attack had been little more than an inconvenience. If I had a nickel for every time someone tried that one on me, I'd be rich, she called out, her voice still lighthearted despite the high stakes. Zorth froze mid-action, his mind scrambling to process what had just occurred. He couldn't fathom how anyone, let alone a human, could respond so unpredictably. Every move she made, every instinctual twist, was more baffling than the last. She didn't play by the rules. She didn't even acknowledge the rules. She was rewriting the entire concept of combat. In a fit of desperation, Zorth unleashed a burst of graviton energy, aiming to crush her under the weight of an artificially created black hole. He wove the energy field into a crushing sphere, trying to force Lily into submission. Lily, however, didn't flinch. She looked up at the massive orb of dark energy and then pulled out something unexpected, a small, glowing fidget spinner. Okay, I think it's time for a little distraction, she said to herself with a grin. She flicked the spinner into the air with casual precision, and the fidget spinner spun, faster and faster, emitting a small hum. The energy sphere, which had been pulsing with destructive force, suddenly wavered. The graviton field became erratic, twisting uncontrollably as the spinner's resonance interfered with its frequency. Zortha's 6 eyes widened in realization. What is this madness? With one final flick of her wrist, Lily sent the spinner flying directly at the center of the graviton field. The result was immediate. The black hole collapsed inward on itself, dissipating in a flash of energy. The arena fell silent. Zortha's eyes darted back to Lily. She was smiling, completely unbothered, while he stood there, gasping, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. Didn't know you were a fan of resonance interference, huh? Pretty effective stuff, actually, Lily remarked, her voice dripping with amusement. Zortha's frustration boiled over. He let out a primal roar and rushed toward her, his massive form a blur of motion. But before he could reach her, Lily leapt into the air again, this time flipping backward as though she had all the time in the universe. As she descended, she landed squarely on Zortha's shoulder, grinning ear to ear. The audience collectively gasped as Lily steadied herself on his shoulder, like a gymnast landing after a perfect routine. "Well, this is fun," she said, looking down at Zorth with an almost casual air. "But I think you had enough, don't you?" The once unbeatable warrior was stunned. He had spent his entire life mastering the art of combat, adhering to the strictest codes of tradition. And yet this human, this chaotic, unpredictable, and utterly ridiculous human, had outwitted him at every turn. Without a word, Zorth collapsed to his knees, defeated not by force, but by the sheer audacity of Lily's approach. The crowd erupted into deafening applause, unsure whether to laugh, cheer, or simply accept the sheer absurdity of what they had witnessed. Lily hopped off Zortha's shoulder, landing gracefully on the ground. She gave him a playful pat on the back as she walked past him. "You're not bad," she said, grinning. "But I guess tradition just can't compete with a little bit of chaos." As the crowd continued to cheer, Lily turned toward the stands, where her fellow competitors and spectators were still in stunned awe. She threw her arms up in victory, but not with the calculated, fierce triumph of a champion. No! She was simply enjoying the moment, savoring the fact that she had just broken the universe's most sacred rule: never, ever challenge the traditional way. And she had done it with style, humor, and, most importantly, heart. The galaxy had just witnessed something they would never forget. A human, imperfect, spontaneous, and full of surprises, had changed the course of history, and she had done it by simply being herself. The arena was still reverberating with the deafening cheers of the crowd, the echoes of a galaxy-wide celebration that would forever be etched in history. Lily Green, the human with no formal training, no tradition to follow, and no respect for the rules, had done what no one thought possible. She had defeated Zorth, the greatest warrior the galaxy had ever known. As she stood in the center of the arena, breathing lightly despite the intensity of the fight, she felt an overwhelming sense of relief and something else. A quiet hum of satisfaction mixed with awe, not at her victory, but at the path that had brought her here. This wasn't about winning a tournament or even defeating a foe. It was about breaking the old, rigid structures that had long defined the galaxy. Around her, the crowd's cheers echoed with a new kind of energy, a deeper, more profound understanding. She had done more than just fight. She had sparked something far greater, something necessary. Zorth, still kneeling, looked up at her, the raw realization of defeat settling into his ancient bones. For the first time in centuries, he felt a stir of something unfamiliar, uncertainty. It wasn't just his loss that stung. It was the fact that Lily had done in a way that made him question everything he had spent his life defending. "You..." Zortha's voice was gravelly with exhaustion, but there was a note of reflection in it now. "You didn't follow the rules. You didn't fight with skill. You fought with chaos." Lily tilted her head, considering him for a moment before responding with that same easy smile that had bewildered him throughout the match. "Exactly," she said. "And you know what? Chaos isn't the opposite of order. It's the opposite of stagnation. If the galaxy never changes, it'll stop growing. I just gave it a little push." Zora stared at her for a long moment, his eyes swirling through thoughts that weren't his own, ideas of tradition and combat that had once been irrefutable. Slowly, his gaze softened. "Perfection doesn't leave room for evolution," he said, his voice low but thoughtful. "Perhaps that is what I've missed all this time. I have sought to preserve the old ways, but perhaps the old ways need to adapt." Lily nodded, crossing her arms with a thoughtful expression. "Exactly. Rules aren't limits. They're just opportunities for creativity." Her words carried a weight that reverberated across the galaxy, even if only a few realized it at first. The established order, Zortha's order, had been built on a foundation of unyielding precision, perfect technique, and an almost obsessive commitment to tradition. But Lily had proven that tradition wasn't a straight line. It was a framework, one that could be bent, twisted, and reshaped. As she looked out over the vast expanse of the arena, now filled with spectators from every corner of the galaxy, Lily couldn't help but feel the quiet hum of something much bigger than herself stirring in the air. This moment, her victory, wasn't just personal. It was the start of something new, something that had the potential to reshape the galaxy itself. Zorth, an ancient symbol of the old ways, had been defeated not by brute force, but by pure, unpredictable ingenuity. Her methods had disrupted the established order, yes. But that disruption, Lily realized, wasn't just about chaos. It was about challenging the status quo, questioning the assumption that things had to be done a certain way just because they always had been. And now, as Zorth rose to his feet, the weight of his defeat pressing upon him, Lily could see that he, too, understood this new reality. The fight had changed him. It had changed everything. The spectators began to chant her name, their voices rising in a singular wave of excitement. Yet, despite the overwhelming attention, Lily remained grounded, a soft smile on her lips. "Thanks for the fight, Zorth," she said, her voice light but sincere. "You're a tough opponent, but I guess sometimes you have to break a few rules to see what's possible." Zorth gave her a slow, thoughtful nod. "Perhaps, young one, perhaps." He turned to the audience, raising his arms in the air, signaling the end of the battle. "The tournament has changed," he announced, his voice now tinged with respect. "The rules will have to change." The roar of the crowd grew louder, a collective understanding sweeping over them. This was no longer just about combat. It was about the future, and the future, it seemed, had no place for the rigid boundaries of the past. Later that evening, as the stars of the galaxy twinkled overhead, Lily sat alone in the quiet aftermath of her victory, her legs crossed, looking out over the tranquil landscape of the arena. She had done it. Changed the galaxy with one chaotic, spontaneous act. But in the quiet of the night, as she reflected on everything that had led to this point, Lily felt the weight of her new responsibility settling into her chest. She wasn't just a victor. She was a symbol of something larger. The galaxy wasn't going to change overnight. It would take time. There would be resistance. But she had lit a spark, and that spark could not be extinguished. "Chaos," Lily murmured to herself, her smile a little more wistful now. "Chaos is what leads to the greatest creativity." As the last of the spectators filtered out, Zorth walked up beside her, his presence no longer one of menace, but of quiet reflection. He, too, had been changed. For the first time in centuries, he felt a flicker of excitement. Not about winning or losing, but about what might come next. "I never thought I'd see the day when the galaxy would be shaped by chaos," Zorth admitted, his tone somber but thoughtful. "Chaos isn't the end," Lily replied, her voice quiet but resolute. "It's just the beginning." And with that, the two of them sat in the silence of the night, not as enemies, but as fellow travelers on a new journey, bound by the same uncertainty, the same excitement, and the same conviction that sometimes, in order to move forward, you have to break everything apart first. The galaxy had changed, and with it, so had they. As the celebrations wound down and the vast arena fell into a peaceful hum, Lily sat back, her eyes tracing the stars above. The galaxy had just witnessed a shift, one she had never imagined, yet had always known was possible. Her victory was more than just personal. It was a beacon, a spark that had set a fire in the hearts of countless beings, each wondering, each questioning what it meant to truly change. Zorth, standing beside her, stared out into the horizon as well, his eyes no longer clouded by the stubborn rigidity that had defined him for so long. The ancient warrior was a changed being, but Evie couldn't deny that the road ahead was uncertain. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. It wasn't about precision or perfection. "Do you think the galaxy is ready for what comes next?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. Her tone was light, but the question held weight. Zorth didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. The answer was in the shifting atmosphere, in the newfound energy buzzing throughout the galaxy. The rules of combat, of life, were no longer set in stone. They could bend, twist, and evolve. "Ready or not," Zorth said with a small, amused smirk, "the galaxy never saw chaos coming." Lily chuckled, glancing at the distant planets floating silently in space. The challenge was just beginning. She had been the catalyst. But what happened next? That was the question that would define the future. One thing was certain. Change was coming, and it would be unlike anything anyone had prepared for. "I guess we'll find out," Lily said with a sly grin. "Maybe it's time for a new galaxy order." A loud, echoing voice broke the calm. The Galactic Council had sent a message. "Attention all planetary leaders and combat factions. Due to recent developments, all traditional combat laws will be reviewed. The introduction of creative methods is now under consideration. All citizens of the galaxy are encouraged to submit their proposals." Lily and Zorth exchanged a knowing glance. The words creative methods were hardly subtle. "Well," Lily said with a wink, standing up and stretching her arms, "looks like it's time for me to send a few ideas of my own." Zorth laughed deeply, his voice carrying a weight of newfound respect. "I think you've already started a revolution, young one. Perhaps now you'll lead it." And as they turned toward the distant planets, the spark of change that Lily had ignited began to spread. Like wildfire across the galaxy, new alliances would form, old traditions would crumble, and for the first time in millennia, the universe would truly be forced to reckon with the unpredictability of humanity. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, uncertainty didn't seem so bad. After all, where there was chaos, there was potential, and in that potential, anything was possible. Time to shake things up, Lily whispered to herself, already thinking of the next impossible task. Because if there was one thing she knew, it was that this galaxy was her playground now. As the stars twinkled brightly overhead, it wasn't the silence that filled the space. It was the sound of the universe holding its breath, waiting for the next great story to unfold. The galaxy had changed, but it was just getting started.